This is SoundNotion, the weekly podcast for new music and music news. I'm David McDonald.
I'm Sam Merciers.
And I'm Nate Blyton.
And this week we are not going to talk about one of the big stories that has been going around the new music and classical music blog world this week. That is Vasily Petrenko's statement about men conductors being inherently better or interpreting things and instructing musicians or something than female conductors, which is obviously kind of BS, but we want to make sure that we are not speaking from quite the same perspective of ignorance with which we speak about many things, and so we're going to talk about that at a later date when we can have somebody on the show who has more personal experience with the matter. So stay tuned. We'll let you know when that is going to happen, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Next week we have I'm already blanking on who we have next week.
A guest.
We already have somebody scheduled.
Dave, you blanked out because I think you probably saw a picture of a cute girl on your screen somewhere, and you totally lost your train of thought.
That's absolutely what happened. Because that's what happens on my computer all the time. It's hard to look at any of the screens around here and not see that.
Right. So
next
who is
week,
the guest next week?
It's David T. Little.
Oh, yes, David T. Little, who has a fantastic new music series in the D.C. area. So absolutely come back and check out the Shenandoah music series that he's working with. It's very cool stuff. Anyway, we begin this week though where we begin many unfortunate discussions in Minnesota because what was that, Sam? It's a very, very sad story. It is not getting less sad. It's actually getting more angry now. The Minnesota Orchestra has now missed their whole 2012-2013 season, and they are not going to stop there because they are overachievers in the Minnesota Orchestra Association. They would like to basically at least kill most of this season, if not the whole orchestra. It's getting to the point where I am almost ready to just say, stop telling me about what's going on with the Minnesota Orchestra. Let me know when they've dissolved and there's someone forming a new orchestra in Minneapolis, because it's going nowhere fast. As we told you about months ago, music director Osmo Vanska gave an ultimatum to the orchestra. And he said, if we're not back and playing by September, then I'm out of here. And he wanted to be back and rehearsing. I think the date that he gave was September 9th, because they were working on these recording sessions for the Sibelius 3 and 6, I believe, they were going to record this year. As you recall, they were Grammy nominated for their recording of Sibelius 2 and 5 last year. And it was a fantastic recording. We're going to listen to a little bit of it later, but some people are saying that maybe that ultimatum is no longer stands because that recording session was canceled. But if I'm Osmo Vanska, this is getting to the point where I wonder if it's ever going to be back, and I would need to start looking for other opportunities, which I'm sure he has been doing already. And Michael Henson, the president of the MOA, the Minnesota Orchestra Association, a.k.a. management in this labor dispute, has described the musicians this last week as fungible.
Fungible?
Fungible.
I don't know that word.
It's a new F word for you. It means, it's pretty much business speak for saying that they're replaceable. They're interchangeable. They're commodities, basically. You can take one out and put another one in. They're flexible. There's nothing particularly special about the ones we have because they can always be replaced, which is bullshit.
Right.
Right?
Dave's gonna have to go and fix that one in post. You know he really cares if you let loose with a swear word.
Well,
and the funny part about it is that the truly fungible part of this is the management.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say earlier when I stopped myself before the show.
Yeah.
You say, you know who's fungible here? none of the musicians and all of the management. Because if you change music directors, you're going to have a different sounding orchestra. And if you change principal clarinetists like they did, they lost one of the greatest clarinet players in the country, if not the world, Bert Hara. And it's not going to sound the same when they record Sibelius. Eventually, hopefully, they're going to record Sibelius 3 and 6, and there'll be a different clarinetist. And I'm not saying that it's going to be worse, but it's going to definitely be a different thing.
Yeah, and take 16 violins who've never played together, who are individually great players, and say, okay, now you guys are a violin section, so play perfectly in tune and with the same feeling for phrasing and all that stuff. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Drew McManus, friend of the show, Drew McManus, thinks that Osmo is out. He thinks that
Osmo's gone.
He thinks that it's too late and it's going to happen. So we'll see. But Drew knows a thing or two about orchestras. So.
Well, and this is the thing, and we saw this same thing actually with Detroit, that there's so much bad blood and there's so much anger between the sides that even if they reach an agreement, I think there's still a lot of incentive for people to leave if the management is the same.
Yeah.
Right? There's still the trust is still gone, and the goodwill is gone, and it's gonna if it ever comes back, it's gonna take decades to come back. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for musicians to say, I don't have that kind of patience. Mm-hmm. Because there's a chance that it will never come back. And there are other orchestras that are functional, that are not run by assholes, that I would like to play in.
If you want to hear someone channel your anger over the situation in a deliciously snarky fashion, you should go to Sticks and Drones and read Bill Eden's.
I've always said I guess so. I guess it could be Eden's.
When he comes on the show, he can tell us how to pronounce it.
Bill is great. We should totally get Bill on the show.
Bill Edens writes a blog post on Sticks and Drones in the form of a letter from the administration to the patrons of the Minnesota Orchestra. And it's very funny. In he's basically saying, screw you, is what he's saying that the administration is saying to the patrons, and they really are. So anyway, it's not deep analysis, but it is good for a laugh, and it will channel your anger over the situation.
It certainly makes me feel better.
Yes.
So I don't know if there's really anything more we can say about that. It doesn't look good. Situation. It doesn't look good. I am not hopeful. I don't think Drew is hopeful. And I think maybe it's time to start to start figuring out how the new orchestra is going to be structured, so these sorts of things can maybe not happen.
Right. So, but in the category of first world problems, what's going on with the Minnesota Orchestra is certainly frustrating. But recently in North Korea, now this is hard to really confirm, but the story was floating around on the internet, and it's worth mentioning. Not surprisingly, that news out of North Korea is a little unreliable, but there are reports that the entirety of is it Unhasa?
I'm saying Unhasu, but I don't know.
Unhasu Orchestra in
Pyongyang.
Pyongyang was gunned down in the street for political reasons. And
it was a public execution of the entire orchestra. Right.
And, we joke and make fun a lot, but every time I think about this story, anyone who thinks that music isn't really important culturally anymore should remember these guys that were publicly executed because they were musicians, and it was done so for political reasons.
And hat tip to the blog that is writing this, Classical Iconoclast. I haven't seen this anywhere else. I've seen a couple of other kind of mentions of this in other places, but I haven't seen anyone else with the story quite so explicitly. And as Sam mentioned, it's certainly possible that some of this is not exactly what happened, and it's really hard for anyone to know what's going on in North Korea. we'll have to ask Ambassador Rodman when he gets back if he heard anything about this orchestra being gunned down. But I don't really know what to say about it. It's not really clear why it happened either, which is also a little strange.
Well, one aspect is that one of the members was at least suspected as a having romantic involvement with Kim Jong-un. Is that the current? Yeah. So who knows? Some embarrassing factoid that he wanted to eliminate forever, and the best way to do it is get rid of everybody who might know about it. Who knows? Yeah, anyway,
and there were other reports about this that kind of focused more on that ex-girlfriend thing. Apparently, he had his ex-girlfriend executed. So,
right,
North Korea.
Enough about them and that ass clown.
Right.
In more uplifting orchestral news, the Edinburgh Symphony has had their premiere of the second installment of Todd Macover's Festival City, the crowdsourced sort of piece that we talked about originally going down in Toronto.
This is kind of an adaptation of the thing that he did for Toronto, right?
Right, and it's the same kind of thing where they use, MIT products that were generated to gather content from the community, and that was premiered August 27th. We didn't catch it last week, but not a lot to say except, when Todd was on the show, he mentioned it was going to go down in Edinburgh, and it did, and according to reports, it went off without a hitch, and congratulations to them on another cool project, both to Todd and to the city of Edinburgh.
Yeah, they do good work.
Yeah, and speaking of the MIT Media Labs, this is not a brand new story, but anyone familiar with Imogene Heap, she's sort of, she's a pop artist wherein the term pop is the best thing you can say because it's not terribly descriptive of what she is. She's the thinking man's pop artist,
Yeah. The unpopular popular music.
Unpopular popular music. Well, she worked with the MIT Media Lab to come up with these magic gloves, as she calls them. And this is nothing new.
It sounds like something you would buy in an adult bookstore.
Magic gloves.
It's interesting that someone who is so at least connected to the pop world in a very strong way is using something that if you describe what she's doing with these gloves and waving her hands around to make noises and stuff, you think, oh, that went down at Darmstadt. No, it's Imogene Heap's new concert, and she is really using this in performance and as an alternative to using Ableton. So we'll link to it in the show notes. There's a video of her giving a talk, describing it and demonstrating them, and it's pretty interesting.
The rig's pretty rad, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that the rig itself or what it does is that groundbreaking. It's just who is using it and in what context it's getting used is the interesting thing.
High stakes interactive electronic music in pop world. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And who hasn't sat at an electronic music concert and waited for a Windows machine to reboot? You know, so kudos to her for stepping out on a limb to try and get that done.
Nate, you do some stuff like this. Do
Yeah.
you find that is there a difference in the level of patience that different kinds of audiences have for these kinds of things?
Well, I can only imagine. So in popular context, when I've seen people use this kind of technology and things go wrong, they usually at least have the presence of mind and the stage presence to pull it off and tell some jokes as it's starting and doing these things and everything, and then they can get going again, which is a little bit of a difference between the people that I've interacted with doing it in the classical music world. Not quite the same stage presence, and that's something that can really help sell it a lot, but I haven't actually watched this whole video, but I'm intrigued with the rig that she has and just the simplicity of what it seems to let her mapping what she's doing and going around and just having the thing she's near be amplified and be controlled by what she's doing. It seems pretty solid.
Yeah, it seems like this would be a good topic for a show of some kind, some kind of
Yeah.
web show about electronic music, maybe.
You know,
We should think about that.
So yeah, for more in-depth analysis of Imogen Heap's new magic gloves and wrist mics and everything, check out the next Patch In, I believe it's called.
Yeah, Nate doesn't know the name of his own show, which is a good sign, I think.
Right, exactly.
If you're not familiar, we're launching a new show. It's in beta right now. You can watch the first beta episode on YouTube. We'll have another beta episode coming out later this month of Patch In, a new show about electronic music. So if that interests you, join hosts Nate Blyton and Ben Furman on a journey through all the music that is made with voltages and bits and things.
It's quite the fantastic voyage.
I see what you did there. I like it. Speaking of things that are just getting off the ground,
Cha-ching!
Kickstarter. Oh, I skipped one.
You skipped one.
Happy birthday, Issue Project Room.
Yeah, Issue Project Room is celebrating the fact that humans evolved with 10 fingers. I mean, their 10th anniversary. No, I mean, we make fun of celebrating these kind of things sometimes in the show, but for someone who is really a force in presenting new music and cool shows and really working with some and engaging with some really cool, interesting artists, Issue Project Room is turning 10, and they're celebrating with a couple month long from August 31st through October 26th, sort of a very long group celebration called 10 Years Alive on the Infinite Plane, celebrating Issue Project Room's 10th anniversary.
No, and I'm not mad at this kind of anniversary. This is different than a Wagner, bicentennial, because these people still are around and doing stuff, and we should recognize the awesomeness of them having been doing awesome things for 10 years now. Like that's worth celebrating.
And just take a look at, I'll have a link, but the sort of the program announcement of the 10 Years Alive on the Infinite Plane has a graphic that shows a big list of people that they've featured, and just reading through there, like not just new people, but like Tony Conrad, who, if you don't know who Tony Conrad is, a really, really early guy in minimalism or sort of drone music, Pauline Oliveras, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. Lots of big names, and they're a big proponent of sort of the crossover between, art music and pop music, which I'm very interested in. So congratulations to them.
Now let's get to the Kickstarter story.
Now,
Kickstarter time. We don't talk about a ton of Kickstarters, and I don't want to get into the habit of making the show like plugging all of these crowdfunding projects, but this one is particularly cool, and you should check it out. It is the Spectral Quartet, awesome string quartet, has a Kickstarter project that they're calling Mobile Miniatures, New Music for Your Phone. Now, if that sounds silly, it is a little bit. What they're doing is commissioning composers to write original notification sounds for mobile devices that the Spectral Quartet, will record and make available to you, which is amazing.
I don't think it's silly. I think it's awesome.
I think it's a little silly, but that does not mean that it is not also awesome. So check out some of these composers, though. These are like serious, big-time composers. Like there are Pulitzer winners that are going to be writing ringtones for this project. Plural.
David Lang, Mason Bates, Sarah Kirkland Snyder, Augusta Reed Thomas, friend of the show, Augusta Reed Thomas.
Yeah.
There's just Nico Muley, Mark Mellitz.
There's some serious names here.
They're all serious names.
Yep.
So
Bernard Rands. So like and it's not just like the new
not just the newest and
people.
hippest, uptown proto neo post super minimalist
David
dudes.
Skidmore. Although I met Bernard Rands, and he may be an older fella, but he's super with it.
He's a pretty cool guy. But it's a different kind of music. The point is, he's writing a different kind of music than Mason Bates and Nico Muhly and David Lang, and it's great that the point is they're getting a huge variety.
Shulamit Ron, I just saw that one.
Yeah, wow. Like,
wow,
this is a serious compositional undertaking for ringtones.
That's awesome.
And it's gonna the thing that is very sad about this to me is that I do not use ringtones. My phone is literally on silent, no nothing at any time, because there are too many opportunities for my phone making noise to embarrass me. So I just avoid that by not having my phone make any noise ever.
Yeah. Did you guys know that from what I understand, Thomas Dolby is largely responsible for a lot of the early ringtones?
Really?
Do you know this artist Thomas Dolby?
Oh yeah.
No.
Blinded by Science.
She blinded me with science, baby.
Yeah.
Aliens ate from the album, or no, his album after that was Aliens Ate My Buick.
Some pretty great stuff. So all these wonderful composers can now join the ranks of the likes of Thomas Dolby. That's great.
Well, he's not just a composer. Like, anyone who doesn't know, if you know what Dolby is in regard to, surround sound, that's him. That's the guy.
Oh, I didn't realize that link.
I knew something about audio engineering that Nate didn't know.
You want a show?
Yeah, that's it. It's called Stuff Nate Doesn't Know.
I just fired this host. I haven't told him yet, but we got this new show about electronic music, and we're looking for a host.
So
Did the host
anyway,
know the name of the show.
So you can check out their Kickstarter. It's a pretty wonderful thing, and they've got an amazing video. It's super funny, and
it's kind of hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to spoil their video and steal it from them, but you should definitely check it out because it is brilliant.
Yeah. So for a complete non sequitur.
Speaking of nothing, we were just talking about.
The final night of the proms, was it last night?
I think it was last night as we're recording this. The last night of the proms is huge. For those of you that are not familiar with the classical music culture of the UK, the proms is this huge concert series, music series, and the last night of the proms is this ridiculous television show of a party, or a party of a television show, I guess. Either way, and they have all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on. They have like audience sing-alongs and like it's a blowout. And Joyce DiDonato had a performance that had been scheduled for a really long time, and she was going to be singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And this had been scheduled long time ago. But she wrote on her blog this week before this performance that she was going to be dedicating her performance to I want to get this quote right. This is exactly what she wrote. To all those brave, valorous gay and lesbian souls whose voices are currently being silenced either by family, friends, or by their government, specifically in regard to gay and lesbian Russian musicians, I think is kind of the subtext here.
Right.
So a very cool thing to have in a place like the proms. The level of musicianship at the proms means that there are a lot of international musicians all in the same place there, and this is a venue for tons of musicians from all over the world, and there are a ton of people watching. So it's a very cool thing. Alex Ross mentioned this as well on his blog, and he said that he was going to be having a piece in The New Yorker about gay and lesbian Russian musicians in the near future. So look for that.
So that was Somewhere Over the Rainbow with purple in it. The purple gay pride rainbow, right?
Right. Because they got rid of indigo. The science doesn't do the indigo anymore.
That's
like
it.
they got rid of it's in the bag with Pluto. We don't do
the
that
story
anymore.
about why Pluto is not considered a planet anymore is very interesting, actually.
I think it's way more interesting than why indigo is not a color anymore. We just rode that one right off the rails, didn't we?
Yeah, right.
We're gonna need to call a tow truck and get the winch to pull us back on the road.
Could I phone a friend?
Yeah, go for it.
I was going to call my friend Ludwig.
Oh, Ludwig?
I don't get it.
Yes. We've talked a lot about on the show, or we've mentioned several times, Coursera offering music classes. Coursera, if you don't know, is a free online classes.
Is it massively open online courses? MOOCs.
Yes. Okay.
It's a thing. MOOCs.
So anyway, this is one of the reasons why in some number of years from now, universities either won't exist or they will be completely different than they are now, which it couldn't happen fast enough, in my opinion.
Is it just me, or does MOOC, when you say MOOCs, does that sound like a racial slur? Like that's I don't know what race I would be slurring by saying it, but it's what people call these courses.
I've heard that used as like an insulting term, but I don't know if it has any kind of ethnic connection at all.
It sounds like it should be an insult, though, right?
It does.
But
so
it's
anyway, I've taken, or I started taking a songwriting class, and let me tell you, if you think that this is going to be weak in some way, and like you're going to look down your nose, like the reason I stopped taking that songwriting class is I didn't have time to do the homework. It was a serious class taught by a serious guy who it was obvious after the first couple of homework assignments he really knew his stuff. And speaking of guys who really know his stuff, there was a lot of talk about the new one that's coming out that just started September 3rd, right?
Yeah, just this week.
Exploring Beethoven's Piano Sonatas with Jonathan Biss, who is on faculty at Curtis. Is that correct?
Yeah, interestingly, he's not a musicologist and he's not a theorist. He's just a pianist. And I watched the first set of videos, which is basically like a 1-hour lecture broken up into 6 or 7 pieces, and it was very interesting. And he gave a lot of good background, and he knows his stuff. Obviously, he teaches at Curtis. And I really look forward to the rest of the lectures. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily do all the assignments and stuff, but I'm at least going to check out all the course materials. So it's
right.
and there are like tens of thousands of people. This is the thing, right? It would be one thing if they made this course about Beethoven and like 200 people showed up on the internet, but there are like tens of thousands of people registered for this class, which is bananas. People don't care about Beethoven piano sonatas, except clearly they do.
Yeah.
Right? People don't care about classical music, except there's like tens of thousands of people that want to learn more about them.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
When can I teach the Coursera course about music of the 20th and 21st centuries?
No kidding. Or they should have us as teachers in residence for Coursera teaching about 21st century music.
Right.
That's right.
Totally.
The whole crew.
So actually, here's the problem though with this. When they teach about Beethoven, they can video record a performance by Jonathan Biss, and in these lectures, he kind of sets up Beethoven in this first one. There's actually very little discussion of Beethoven, interestingly, in the first lecture. The first hour is mostly about Haydn, Mozart, a little bit about Bach, and kind of about the principles of sonata form in general, because that's what he's going to be talking about for the rest of the thing. So you need a little bit of background information. But in this lecture, he piece by piece plays through most of I think it's K333 Mozart B flat major piano sonata, which is kind of like, day one, book one.
I have students doing homework off that piece as we speak.
Well, they should watch this video.
That's right.
So anyway, he plays through the whole thing, right? And because Mozart is 200 years dead, that's totally cool, right? His music is in the public domain. But if we wanted to teach a course that involved, Schoenberg and Boulez and Stravinsky, even though those guys have been dead for a very long time, we'd have a lot of hoops to jump through if we wanted to play any of that music for our students. So it's actually, I think that's one of the things that really hinders this really fantastic tool for teaching more contemporary topics.
Yeah, I mean, and we should also consider, I would love to see classes on 21st century music. You know, I'm very much in favor of trying to get students to engage with the music that's being put out right now, and it just isn't going to happen.
Well,
no
and
way.
we've been, and you know what makes me think about that is that I've been following this series that NPR's music internet things have been doing about contemporary composers dealing with the symphony. Like In Search of the New American Symphony or something like that is the series. Yeah. And the most recent one was with a friend of the show, Derek Bermel, and their comments on all of these things, like, why are they writing such weird music? I don't understand why they can't these guys just don't know how to write tonality. They don't know how to write a melody. Well, first of all, I don't think that's true. They do know how to write tonal music, and they do know how to write melodies. They choose not to. But I can't explain this I don't even try to explain this to them in a blog comment, because that's not the venue for it. It's like having a debate about the death penalty on Twitter. Like 140 characters doesn't really serve that purpose. And a blog comment doesn't really serve the purpose of explaining the value of originality and newness to somebody on the NPR music blog. And something like a Coursera course, I think, is exactly the right way to do this, right? Because I can't sit down and say, here, read the rest is noise and come back to me in a month, right? We need something that is more direct and more, like, I think people just find these videos by these professors, many of whom are excellent professors. Jonathan Biss speaks very passionately, and he's a great lecturer in these videos, and that is really hard to get from a book for a lot of people, I think. Especially since he's, talking and then playing the piano and then talking and then playing. He's like sitting at a piano bench the whole time. It's really, really great little lecture series. I think it has the potential to have a life outside of just the Coursera course, actually. And that's another story. But it's never going to happen like that for contemporary music. And if it is, it's going to be really hard, and it may not be able to be made for free simply because of all of the weird licensing restrictions. Even though it would, I think, clearly benefit the Stravinsky estate for people to dig on Stravinsky,
or the Nico Muhly estate.
Well, I'm just talking about these things that are like really old.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what year this is. This is my copy of the Stravinsky octet score. This is 1923, new version 1952, right? This is so like this. I should be able to teach this on the internet and not worry about it, but this doesn't work like that. I can't.
Yep.
So let's solve that problem, and then I can teach everyone. I'm the one to do it. But
anyone who doesn't know about Coursera more generally, it's just there's all kinds of really cool classes. Musician Man 1 took a music production class, which I had considered taking in chat. Musician Man 1, and if those classes are anything like what I experienced in the songwriting class, then you'll actually learn something.
Yeah, and I actually I'm enrolled in this Exploring the Beethoven Piano Sonatas course. There's another course from Curtis that's coming later this fall, but the thing that I'm super excited about just started today as we're recording this, a course in modern poetry, which I'm really excited about. Anyway, I think we've beaten that one to death, but it's a very cool story, and I wish that we could be having this conversation about more contemporary music in this kind of educational setting.
Right. Speaking of learning about super important masters of their craft.
Heyo!
Oh, there's a new documentary coming out about Jimi Hendrix. documentary Jimi Hendrix, Hear My Train a Comin'. It's going to be it's going to be shown as part of the American Masters series on PBS. And then it'll come out on DVD. Not a lot to say about it, except I'm curious to see it, and I can't wait to see it. And I think friend of the show, Ken Ueno, will be interested in seeing it too. Mm-hmm. We know he's a Jimmy fan. Yeah,
we talked about him a good amount when we had Ken Ueno on the show last time. That's right.
Right. So
because there's so many cool sounds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
And it's going to have previously unreleased concert footage from 1968, which, that's always interesting to see.
Right. Yeah.
Now let's move on to the really fun stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, Dave, I have a question for you and Nate.
Hit me.
Tell me why exactly you hate 21st century music.
Because it's weird, and I don't like things that are weird, Sam. I like things that are comfortable and sound like all the things that I already know and like and love.
Now hold on, guys. I don't like the tone of this question. This is weird.
I reject your premise, sir.
You see what I did there? I assumed that you hate 21st century music, so I didn't give you an option other than to express the reason for your hatred.
And you know what happens when you assume, Sam? You make an ass out of AFM Local 802 out of New York.
That was a good one, Dave.
Oh, man. No, we love the AFM. We love Local 802. But they sent this really, really weird questionnaire out to their members this week. And Rob Deemer had a great kind of takedown, might be a little harsh, but a great write-up about it. Takedown, write-up? In his New Music Box column this week. And the title of this thing is, How Do You Really Feel About 21st Century Repertoire? And the word really is in italics. As though you would... I guess they expect you to lie about it or something? Right. No, I know you're going to lie about this stuff, but... And I know you're going to say you like it, but come on, nobody really likes it, right? I mean,
we're all just being nice to these new composers, right?
Right, exactly. Right? Yeah. So, yes. There are a number of questions in this questionnaire, and Rob goes through each of them individually. But the first one is, obviously, how do you really feel about outside of that one? But in many ways, the future of classical music depends on the repertoire. You think? You think there's going to be music without repertoire? Like, if they're playing something, they're playing something.
Does it also depend on the price of goat cheese or something? I don't know.
This is a ridiculous thing. But as a musician, what do you really think of new work? What do you like what do you like most about performing new compositions? Here's a good one. What drives you crazy about them? How do you think 21st century repertoire speaks or doesn't speak ! In parenthesis to audiences? This is going to be my new show. Is reading ridiculous web writing live on the podcast. This is going to be Dave interprets
with a special
emails.
Segment: top 10 worst survey questions of the week.
Right. Yeah. What's it like when a composer is present at rehearsal and gives comments? Those assholes wanting you to play what they've written.
Yeah, and caring that you interpret it correctly.
Allegro, which is the kind of their newsletter, is planning a story on what our members think of 21st century repertoire, both the good and the bad. We'd love to hear your thoughts because you represent the front line. Also known, by the way, you know how to say the front line in French? Avant-garde. Sort of. That's a little rough translation, but anyway. So it's had to throw that little needle in there. Composers and audiences need to hear your point of view, I guess. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you should join that conversation with 802. What do you guys think about this questionnaire?
It's redonkulous, first of all.
Why is it redonkulous?
Well, because of the way we've said the way the questions are phrased, but it's pretty telling if you look at comments like Nikitas Demos.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, and I even worked at a Greek restaurant, and I'm still not sure if I'm pronouncing it right.
So you basically are a Greek ambassador, I think.
That's right. I wouldn't go that far. I'm a attaché.
Okay.
So anyway, he's basically supporting Rob's point that these questions are ridiculous. And then there's another one that's the same. And then you keep going down, and then the people who think that the questions don't sound unreasonable, in their comment, they also reveal that, well, I really like, basically common practice music. I don't like weird, ugly new music. So basically, the people who, the sentiment that we suspect the questions are geared to pander to is borne out, at least in part, by the comments. The people that agree that, what do you really think? It's borne out that they that's the way they feel. They don't like new, weird, ugly music. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's a lot easier when you don't have to be, when the guy whose music you're playing has been dead for a couple of 100 years, you don't have to
he doesn't get to come to rehearsal.
Yeah, he doesn't get to come to rehearsal, and we like that so much better. It's so much easier. Exactly. Plus, that music has been played 5,000 times before, so we know exactly how it should sound, and we like that a lot better too.
Yeah. So, I should say, if anybody from Local 802 is hearing this and would like to comment on this questionnaire, please get in touch with us. We would love to have this conversation with you and not just rip on you. But the questionnaire is a little silly. Here's the thing that's really unfortunate, I think, about the questionnaire and about this discussion is that these intellectually are interesting and compelling questions. These are things that we should be talking about. We should be asking musicians what they like and don't like about the new music that they are playing, right? That should be a part of the creative process. Right. The thing that is unfortunate is the tone. And clearly, this comes from the perspective of somebody who is not terribly invested in new music, who is not terribly interested in new music, and maybe we need to think about how we outreach. I hate the word outreach. It sounds so.
It's such a buzzword bingo thing, but that is the right word. You just have to get over the fact that it's overused so much these days.
It's not that it sounds condescending to me. It sounds like I am the person that has this magic knowledge and you are not, and so I am reaching out to you to lift you up to where I am. But that's not the case. We're just in different places.
How about intellectually collaborative networking?
Okay, that sounds worse. We need to make up a verb.
ICNs, yeah.
If you have an idea for a new verb,
a sniglet, if you will.
We'll sniglet. We will sniglet with you. That sounds way bad. Let's not use that one.
Isn't that what Miley Cyrus did?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right.
With you?
It's like it's something like the Macarena.
Yeah,
something like that.
Anyway, we need to have these conversations specifically with the people that think that writing those questions is a reasonable thing to do.
Yes.
Right. But those questions are starting out from an adversarial perspective, and that's clearly not useful.
Bad attitude.
So,
and the fact that it's just that people, that there are people in comments who are denying the adversarial quality of the questions is, no matter how much you hate contemporary music, if you've got a brain, you can't deny that those are starting from a point of, a point of denial rather than a point of inquiry.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Well, I think we may have exhausted our story stream for the day.
Yep.
And I think it's time, Sam.
Hold on, I'm trying something new. I haven't had my rig turned on in a while, so here we go.
All right.
What did that sound
Allow
like?
me to translate.
That's pretty fuzzy.
That was the pick of the week.
That was a Yamaha MG124CX distortion effect, but I can't hear what it's doing. So
that I think might still be in effect because you're still clipping.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Anyway,
it shouldn't be.
I'll let you solve that problem, and while you do that, we're gonna listen to this week's deep cut. We don't have a guest this week. Normally we would have a piece from our guest, but since we've been talking so much lately about the Minnesota Orchestra, we thought the best thing to share with you this week is not necessarily the most bleeding edge composition that we could find, but we want to share with you some of what is on the verge of being lost in Minnesota. This is a clip from their Grammy-nominated recording of Sibelius' Fifth Symphony. Some really brilliant wind playing here at the beginning. You're going to hear some gorgeous brass playing, a really fantastic clarinet solo. And some of these people have already left the orchestra. More are going to leave, even if an agreement is made this afternoon. But keep in mind that this is the thing that we're talking about when we're talking about the Minnesota Orchestra. This and obviously the live performances. So here is the Minnesota Orchestra under the direction of music director Osma Vanska playing a little bit of the first movement of Sibelius' Fifth Symphony. So that was a little bit of the first movement of Sibelius' Fifth Symphony performed by Osma Vanska and the Minnesota Orchestra. I don't know about you guys, but it might be my new favorite Sibelius 5 recording. Those pairs of woodwinds in that opening, it's like intellectually I know that it can't be one player playing both of those sounds, right? But it's so they blend so well in their tone and their articulation and every little bit of the phrasing that it almost sounds like there's one person that is somehow playing two tones at a time on the flute and the oboe and the clarinet.
Brass players that can play that way together and woodwind players.
Sam, can you turn yourself down a little bit?
Sorry. Brass players that can play that way together and woodwind players that can play that way together are not fungible.
No kidding. And those sonorous, warm brass sounds is to play that softly and that with that tone and intonation is just that's really hard to do. On brasses.
I mean, an example would be like, I've listened to tons of orchestral music, obviously, but when we were discussing having this as the pick or the deep cut for the show, Dave played a section of it, and Dave immediately went, "Oh man, listen to that brass sound," and I immediately went, "Oh man, listen to that clarinet sound," and it wasn't just because it was going to be on the show. It's just a great performance, right. And management is. I don't know, they're shooting themselves and every other person in the orchestra and everybody in Minnesota in the foot.
And us. I want to hear them record the third and sixth symphonies.
Right?
Yeah.
Forget those jokers in Minnesota. I want to hear it for me. This is a selfish thing. This is a very selfish thing. I want to hear it, so quit your bitching and make a deal.
Yes.
Got it? And that's going to do it for this week's SoundNotion, God damn it.
Dave is feeling saucy this week.
Oh, man. Thank you to everyone who joined us this week. Thank you, as always, to Sam and Nate for being here. And I thank Patrick as well, even though he's not here. And thank you to everyone who joined us live. We really appreciated your contributions in chat. It's always a good time in chat. If you want to join us, stop back next week when we'll be talking about Shenandoah music scene, and we'll be talking about all kinds of entrepreneurial projects in new music in the DC area. So it's going to be a great show. And you, if you have any questions, can pass those along in chat, and you can ask your own questions of our guest, which is, I think, always a great time. If you have any questions for David Little, I'm sure he would be happy to answer them. Just stop by 11 a.m. Eastern Time next Sunday, soundnotion.tv/live. It's a great time. Everyone in chat is super nice. I promise that they will not bite most of the time. If you are not able to join us, then that's totally fine. This show and all our shows are available on our site, soundnotion.tv/SN. You can also connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. If you have any stories that you'd like to talk about or you'd like to hear us talk about on the show, you can tweet them with hashtag SNWeekly, and we always look at that hashtag as we're putting the show together. You can subscribe to this show and all our shows in the iTunes Store or wherever finer podcasts are aggregated. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by using our Amazon affiliate link on the website. You just use that to search for your Amazon junk, and it doesn't look any different to you once you get to the Amazon store. It doesn't cost you anything else, and it doesn't even behave differently. But we get a tiny commission, and that helps us out a lot. SoundNotion's introduction includes music by Patrick Gullo and video by Tyler Lepp. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you back next week.
Fungibility.